Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation, Passwords, Passkeys, Password Managers, and 2FA. I'm John Grubb from 4kcc.com, and we're always trying to help you stay safe. So let's take a look a little bit before we actually get into passwords and things like that. Let's take a look at some emails that I received a few weeks ago. Here's the first one. You'll see that I got an email that someone was trying to break into my website. And I blocked out the IP addresses and all that because we don't want to go there. But you'll see that they're from Thailand. A few seconds after I got that email, I got another one, and they were from Malaysia. And then I got one from Peru. And then I got one from Indonesia. And then finally, I got one from Egypt. So someone was specifically trying to break into my website. You might wonder why. Sometimes they want to break in because they want to put malicious software on a site, and unsuspecting people will go there and get infected on their computing devices. Sometimes they want to deface the website and put propaganda or other things on. Sometimes they just want to get on there to steal information. Regardless, of course, I go to all kinds of lengths to keep people out of my website. Now, you might wonder, what has that got to do with you? Because if you don't have a website, you don't have to be concerned about that, right? Here's the difference. This hacker specifically looked for me and my website, my company and my website. But hackers are constantly looking for computers that can be hacked because they don't have the proper software or they don't have the proper protection. They're always trying to get into bank accounts. They're trying to get into email accounts, especially. And they don't know you. They may not know you're, John Smith. They're just trying to find computers that they can break into. So we're going to talk today about ways that you can protect yourself. And the first, of course, is we're going to talk about passwords. Now, let's face it, everyone hates passwords. Everybody does. Everybody wants passwords. Hates passwords. The good news is they are slowly being replaced by things like Passkeys and 2FA, which we'll talk about in a little bit. However, they're not going away next week. They're not going away in a month. They may be a couple years before they go away. So we have to deal with passwords. We're going to look at some ways that you should make secure passwords. First, the length, the password length. Passwords should actually be about 12 characters. Now, some sites require at least 8, and that's good, but 12 is better. They also need to be complex. They should contain a minimum number of numbers, upper and lowercase letters, and symbols. Now, when I say minimum, here's what I mean by that. You shouldn't put all numbers in. You shouldn't put all caps in. And you shouldn't put all lowercase. And you shouldn't put all symbols. It should be a minimum mixture of all of those things. Some websites, some accounts, some banks, some email things, they will only allow you to put certain symbols in or something like that. So there are some limitations that the owner of the account or website puts on you, and you need to learn those. I also want to mention this. Yesterday, I installed a new computer, and I went to set up the customer's email account, and I said, "What's your email password?" And they said, "Oh, I don't have one." All right. You cannot have an email account without a password. What happened is a long time ago when they got their previous computer, they put the password in the first time and they checked it to remember me, and now they don't even realize they're putting a password in. So please know that if you have an email account, you have a password. All right, let's continue with some rules for strong passwords. Avoid human readable words. So in other words, you shouldn't put full words in, names, dates, or anything like that. And absolutely avoid dictionary words. Here's what some people will do. They'll say, well, I'll put a Spanish word in, or I'll put a Portuguese word in. Hackers have software that runs entire dictionaries in every language you can think of, and any word that's in there will be run. Not only will it be run normal, it will run the words backwards. So if you use the word and you thought, well, I'll be smart with this, I'll just type the word backwards, their software types it backwards. It also takes those same words in any dictionary you can think of, and it adds the common numbers that people often do. People will often put a word and then they'll put the number 1 or 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, 3, 4. The software does it all. The hacker doesn't have to do anything. The software does it all. So don't use dictionary words of any kind from any dictionary. The next thing, and I run across this all the time, use different passwords. I've had customers that they use the same password. Somebody breaks into their email address, and the next thing you know, they now break into their bank because the person was using the same password. Don't do that. Use multiple passwords. Don't repeat, especially with financial sites and with email. Remember, I always tell people, my second strongest password is on my email because I don't want anyone in it to steal information. And you need to have a strong password in email. All right, now the big thing is you should use a password manager. Whatever you do, don't store your passwords in a browser. I don't care what Microsoft and Google and Mozilla tell you, do not store your passwords in a browser. Because if someone gets onto your machine or they trick you into going to a website that they've hacked, those passwords will be gone in a flash. Use a password manager. The great thing is that you can generate passwords, you can synchronize across devices, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. The last thing about passwords is you can limit password attempts. Now, unfortunately, not a lot of accounts or programs allow you to do that. On my website, for instance, I can limit password attempts. So if somebody attempts to log into my website with more attempts than I've allowed, they get locked out automatically. Unfortunately, a lot of email and bank accounts and things like that don't let you set the number of password attempts. But if you can, you should do it. Now, the next thing we want to talk about is passkeys. Passkeys, you may have been hearing a lot about lately, and passkeys they're easy like passwords, but they're very, very secure. They're easier than passwords, but they're very secure, and they offer a better experience for you. So passkeys are made up of two parts. There's a public key that's on a server somewhere, and then there's the private key that's on your device. It's just very, very secure. You don't need to type anything to sign into your account, except sometimes you might have to type a PIN. That can be a passkey. Instead, you often authenticate yourself biometrically, like by your fingerprint, by your face, by your eye, whatever device your computing device uses, whatever method it uses, you might be able to do that. Now, passkeys are getting more and more popular, and there are major companies that have now started to use them. Apple, you've probably heard a lot about Apple lately. Google, Microsoft, they are designing passkeys to be easy to use, but more secure than passwords. PayPal has also introduced passkeys for iOS. Shopify, Kayak, and DocuSign have introduced them, and Google Workspace also using passkeys. So you don't have to remember any more passwords. But again, it's not going to go away right away. But Apple, they store the passkey in the iCloud keychain, so it's available on all of your devices where you're signed in with your Apple ID. And again, one of the great things is they can stop phishing attacks because the hacker can't get the passkey, and so they can't get into your account. You're going to hear more and more about passkeys. We're going to talk about passkeys more along the line, but just know that that's what's coming up, and that's what's going to eventually replace passwords. And a question that some people ask is, will passkeys replace password managers? Not for a long time, because passwords are not going away for a long time either. Passkeys are great, but they're going to take a while for everyone to adopt them. So let's talk about password managers. What does a password manager do? It stores your information in a single account. The master password is the only one that you have to remember because all of your rest of your passwords are in there. However, this is my biggest caution I tell people. The master password has to be the strongest password you have. Mine is 18 characters long. All right, it has to be very, very strong because it's protecting all of the rest of your passwords. So if you are currently using a password manager and you know that you don't have a strong enough password on it, you need to go in and change the password to a strong password now because it's protecting everything else. You can also take your security up to another level with many password managers. For instance, in my favorite RoboForm, which is the one I use, I can use my hello options, which would be either my PIN or my fingerprint or my face. So I can make it even more secure. I don't actually have to put that 18-character password in as long as I'm using one of these features. And every password manager is a little different. The instructions on how to do what I'm telling you are always available, and you may have to check that out. Or you can email me or make a comment under this video, and I'll try to help you with it. All right. Of course, you can use a password manager. Aside from storing your passwords, you can also use it to create very strong passwords, and you can use it to autofill. So you don't have to put in the username and the password. The password manager does it for you. Okay? So aside from passwords, you can store other things. You can store credit cards, medical information, prescriptions, memberships, all kinds of stuff. And as long as your master password is the most secure password you use, and you follow those things I told you about passwords a few slides back, is that you don't use names, you don't use dictionary words, etc. You can safely store all this stuff in a password manager. Again, you can have it across multiple devices. My RoboForm, which is the one I use and recommend, I have that on all my devices. It's on my iPhone. It's on my Android phone. It's on my iPad. It's on my Mac Pro notebooks. It's on my big Mac computer, and it's on all of my Windows machines. It doesn't cost me any more for the year, but I have it on all of them. If I change a password on one device, when it syncs with the other devices, it changes the password there also. So it's a great thing to use, and absolutely use a password manager. Do not store passwords in the browser. I can't emphasize that enough. Now, the last thing we want to talk about is 2FA, and that stands for two-factor authentication. You might be surprised to learn that you may have been using two-factor authentication already on some accounts. For instance, a lot of banking apps will have you put the password in, and then they'll send a code to your phone. That is 2FA. It's two-factor. You have to pass both factors in order to get into your bank account app. A biometric identifier, your fingerprint or your iris scan, that's another one. So like many of my accounts, it's simply on my iPhone, it simply uses my iris scan, and lets me in with that. All right. Another thing is billing zip code. Sometimes when you go to run a credit card, instead of asking for your full address and all that, it will ask you to put in the billing zip code. That is two-factor authentication. And many of you have probably been using that already. But more and more businesses, more and more websites, more and more apps are now allowing you to use 2FA. In fact, some are enforcing you. I have a few applications. I don't have a choice. I must use 2FA if I want to log in. If I don't use it, I can't log in. And it's going to get more and more that way. Now, let's talk about a little bit security codes like Instagram and other social media platforms. They offer the option of adding a second authentication step using a security code through a text message or through an authenticator app. Now, here's the thing. Authenticator apps, which I'll tell you in a minute, they're way more secure. But let me finish with this. An ATM card and a PIN. You put your card in the ATM, you have to enter your PIN. Okay, that is two-factor authentication. So you've probably been using that for years, and you didn't realize it was 2FA. And now when you hear about 2FA, you get all upset and nervous. Oh, I'm not going to be able to do this. But yet with your ATM card, you've been doing it for years. So it's just another form. Now let's talk about authenticators. And I actually have some YouTube videos. If you look, I have one on Microsoft. There are different authenticators. There's the Microsoft Authenticator. There's the Google Authenticator. There's an Adobe Authenticator. There are different ones. And what this does is it uses an authenticator on your phone or your tablet to send you an authentication, either a number or a message that you have to click yes or no on. These are more secure. When you just get a text message on your phone, that actually can be hacked fairly easily if you happen to be close enough to a hacker that he can get to you. The authenticators are much more secure. Yes, they're a little more complicated to set up in the beginning, and that's why I made my Microsoft Authenticator video, which you'll find on the site here. But if a site offers you the ability to do 2FA with an authenticator, you absolutely should do that. It's much more secure. And again, another way is sending a code to your mobile phone as a text message, but again, it's not as secure as an authenticator. Okay, here are my final suggestions on this for staying safe online. Number one, use a password manager. Use a password manager. Don't write them down in a book. I can't tell you how many times I go to set up a new computer and somebody pulls out their password book and they leaf through page after page and they have a password written down to get into their email and it doesn't work. And then they keep leafing and they find another password and it doesn't work. I mean, forget that. Use a password manager. They're inexpensive, like RoboForm, my favorite. I think it's like $30, a year. So, I'm an affiliate with them. If you buy through me, yes, I get a kickback, but I don't even care about that. RoboForm, password manager, use that. Number two, do not store passwords in a browser. If you accidentally let someone onto your computer that shouldn't be on it, if you have passwords stored in the browser, they've stolen them, believe me. If you get tricked into going to a website and you have passwords stored in a browser, they're gone, okay? Number three, use an authenticator app whenever possible. And number four, always enable 2FA when available. And it's going to become more and more available as we progress, because hackers will do anything to get into your accounts. And these are the ways that you can protect people, that you can protect your personal information. So again, I'll just do it one more time before we end. Number one, use a password manager. Number two, don't store passwords in a browser. Number three, use an authenticator app whenever possible. And number four, always enable 2FA when available. Now, here's the thing. I know what people tell me. They say, it's a pain every time I go to log in, or every so many times when I go to log in, I have to put in my 2FA code. I have to get something to my authenticator, or I have to get in a text message. I get that. It's a little bit of a pain, yes. But while you're enduring that pain, think about the pain you do not have to endure by using 2FA. You don't have to worry about your accounts being hacked by somebody who just breaks in. That's much more painful. And I can tell you right now, I deal with customers who have been hacked. I've had customers who had thousands of dollars stolen from their bank account. And that is a pain you don't want to experience. So yes, 2FA is a little bit of a pain, but use it because you are keeping hackers out. You know, it's kind of like when you go to the bank and you get a teller that doesn't know you and you want to cash a check and they say, could you show me your ID? You know, sometimes we get a little huffy about that. Oh, I bank here all the time, but this is a new teller. I always appreciate that. I get my driver's license out and whatever ID they need without a fuss because I know they're protecting my money in my account. And that's the way you have to look at 2FA. All right, that's it for today. If you have any questions, write in the comment or send me an email at john@4kcc.com, and I'll try to help you with it. But I hope you found this useful. And I did just put my email address in the chat. All right, have a great day, and thanks for viewing the live stream or the follow-up YouTube video.